Hi everybody and welcome to Chapter 1. It's me, it's Richard Wade, the Director of Risk and Safety Compliance Services and the developer of this new and what I hope you're going to find to be an exciting and informative health and safety training course. So let's get stuck in then. So in Chapter 1, I'm going to look at various items relating to safety, and the first one I want to start with is the reasons for health and safety. Why should we bother in the first place? And it's commonly accepted. Now, here's me down in the bottom. Look, I will have to keep moving myself out of the way so that I don't actually block your view of any of the slides, so bear with me. People move around in normal classrooms, so why not in our virtual classroom? So it's widely accepted that you can break down the reasons for getting invested in health and safety into three distinct areas. You've got the moral obligation, the financial implications, and the legal reasons for safety. Each one of those are really, really important. So let's look at each one in turn and let's start off with our moral obligations for health and safety. Well, moving out of the way there, look, if I'm an employer, over here on the left hand side, look, if I'm an employer, if I've got people who I pay to work and keep my business going, or indeed if I have visitors coming into my premises, then I have a duty of care to those people. It's my responsibility to make sure that they are not injured or hurt because of what I do in my place of work. And people have the right to feel safe and secure at work. You know, it'd be a rather horrendous situation to be going to work every day fearing for your life or wondering if you're going to get hurt or injured on that particular day. So there's the moral obligation. I've got to look after my employees, I've got to look after my visitors, and my workers have a right to feel secure when they come to my workplace. And finally, on the right hand side at the bottom there, if I run a safe workplace, then pretty much it's good for business. A safer workforce is better motivated, they feel part of the process, they feel secure and safe in their environment, and they're more likely to be productive, and by default that makes my business more viable and hopefully more profitable. So that's the moral argument for safety. What about the financial implications then? So if you are, I can stay where I am there, look in the top right hand corner. If you're running a business, your finances are a critical part of the operation, and poor health and safety management or allowing people to be exposed to unnecessary risks can have a real catastrophic financial impact upon the viability of your business operation. Injuries at work, I'll go through them bit by bit. The injuries at work can lead to fines, prosecutions and fines, which can be devastating to your business. You know, we see on a regular basis companies around the world, not just in the UK, who as a result of their negligence and injuring their people during their working activities get fines, get prosecuted and get fines totaling many millions of pounds, and it's becoming a more and more common occurrence. Now, if you're running a business that is regularly injuring and hurting people, or even if it's not hurting people, if you're damaging property and machinery as a result of your poor business operations, then financially you can be hurt because your premiums on your insurance will go rocketing through the roof. That is a guarantee. There's associated product and material damage, and if you're injuring people at work, then you can expect to lose their expertise for a short while they're recovering, or possibly more likely, if you're running a very dangerous operation, they're probably going to go and work for one of your competitors. And then ultimately there's the brand damage and the bad publicity that follow quite naturally from prosecutions and injuries and people getting hurt in the workplace. It becomes news very quickly. So, you know, financially it makes sense to pay good heed to health and safety practices. And then let me move out of the way there. And then there's the legal implications. You know, it's the law. Now the law is always, as I say, the lowest level of compliance. It's what you can get away with. If you comply with the law, you're okay, but it is the minimum standard that's applicable. So we should always aim to be a little bit better than what the law says we should be. But look, from a legal perspective, employers and employees, and we'll mention this later on in the course, both have duty of care to each other. We must protect each other from harm. So if I'm the owner of the business, I've got to look after the people who work for me or come and visit me, or work on a contract basis within my business. I've got other people to consider. But likewise, if I'm the employee, I also have a legal responsibility not to breach health and safety legislation or do anything that's dangerous or reckless during the operation of my work. So everyone's got their own responsibilities. And of course, there's statutory law that regulates health and safety in the workplace. There's various acts of parliament within the UK and similar legislation throughout the globe that dictate what we can, but more importantly, what we cannot do with regards to health and safety in the workplace. And predominantly, the law says if you run a business, whether it's an agricultural business or any business operation, quite frankly, you're not allowed to hurt people and you're not allowed to kill people. And that makes good sense to me. So I mentioned those health and safety responsibilities very briefly. We've got on one hand, we've got the employer responsibility, and then on the other hand, we've got the employee's responsibility. So let's delve into those very, very briefly. I'll shift myself out of the way. I'll stick myself right in the middle there. And on the left-hand side here, we've got the responsibilities that apply to our employees. So if I work for an organisation, in our context, it's a farm or an estate or an agricultural or forestry business. If I'm an employee of that organisation, then on the left-hand side there, you can see that I have certain responsibilities to myself and to other people, and also to my employer. I need to follow the health and safety rules, and any procedures or guidance notes or documentation that's been put in place to protect my health and safety, I have a duty to actually follow that. I'm not allowed to make up my own rules and do what I want to do. I've got to follow the rules as dictated and decreed by my employer, which invariably will be what's dictated by law. Where required, I'll need to attend any health and safety training and follow the rules and procedures that are in place. And if I see something that's not quite right in my workplace, then any hazards or things that I feel aren't quite right, I have a duty in law to report any failings or dangers or things that could hurt people quickly to my employer. And I need to be proactive. I need to go out of my way to be safe, follow the rules, and do what I ought to do to keep both myself and other people within the operation safe. So over here on the right hand side, no surprise then that there are employer duties, and in a nutshell you can sum those up in so far as to say, don't injure your people, don't hurt people who come into your business, make the workplace safe, prevent risk to health. And that by definition means we need to assess those risks, and we'll talk about risk assessment a little bit later on in a different chapter of the course, but for now we're concentrating on those responsibilities. So look after people, prevent risk to health, make sure that any plant or machinery that I provide for my workers to use is safe and without unnecessary risk to health. I think in this sector we need to accept that there will be risk. It's a dangerous environment. Farms and agriculture, forestry, land and estate work is a dangerous operation, but that doesn't mean it needs to be killing people or injuring people, because if we identify those risks, we can put controls in place, train our staff and keep them safe. And we'll talk again in a little bit more detail about those aspects a little bit later on in a separate module as we go through the training course. Make sure our safe working practices are there, they're set up, they're easy to follow, and that they are actually followed. And where we provide materials, we need to make sure that they're stored and handled and used safely and correctly, and invariably that will result in us providing good training to our staff members. And then we need to think about what happens if things go wrong, and of course we need to make sure that we make account of accidents and incidents, and ensure that we've got good first aid provisions in place. There are other emergency things we need to consider, but they're covered later on in the course in a different chapter. So let's go around the world then. I'll put myself in the middle there. I wanted to stress at this early stage that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, so wherever you are on the globe, it really doesn't matter as far as health and safety goes. As you're going to see over the following few slides, the causes of accidents and incidents, ill health, and sadly deaths in our sector. So within the agricultural, farming, forestry sector, the causes of all of those injuries and incidents and the things that are killing people are identical. It doesn't matter where you live. You can live in Australia, New Zealand, England, Africa, India, Ghana. It doesn't matter where you are. We're going to see in a moment that it's the same. The same things are killing and injuring people. If we start here, look on the top left-hand side. In England, in the United Kingdom, we've got, this is the key legislation. Our key legislation is the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act. It's a funny little name, but that's what it's called. It's been around a long time. It's still valid today, still relevant today. And in the UK, the Act is enforced by the Health and Safety Executive. So that's the key piece of legislation in the UK. Now, naturally, underneath that legislation, there are various other statutes and regulations, but the main defining body of legislation in England is the Health and Safety at Work Act from 1974. Let's nip across on the right there, look. And we've got a similar set of regulations in Australia, where we've got the Work Health and Safety Act from 2011, and in Australia that's enforced by Safe Work Australia, which is the equivalent body of the UK's Health and Safety Executive. Down here on the bottom left hand side, across in New Zealand, we've got the Health and Safety at Work Act of 2015, very, very similar, enforced by WorkSafe New Zealand. And then at the bottom, we've probably all heard of this on the bottom right hand side, across in America, we've got the Occupational Safety and Health Act from 1970, and that's enforced by the same equivalence, which is known as OSHA. It's very interesting that they all say the same thing. It's worded in different ways and it's got different nuances, but if you're in UK, Australia, New Zealand, if you're in America or any or most developed countries in the world, although the laws are they're called different things, they all effectively say exactly the same thing. Don't kill your people, don't make them sick, and don't make them suffer ill health at work. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? And that makes our life as health and safety people very, very straightforward. Shall we have a look at a couple of statistics? I'll just make myself a little bit smaller, and I'll pop myself in the top right hand corner there out of the way. I wanted to go through in a way to prove a point that it's the same things killing and injuring people regardless of where you are in the globe. So I've picked some key stats from the UK and a couple of other countries. You look at the content. You can come back to this in your own time if you wish. And of course there's the download. You can download the presentation as well. But do have a look. So in the UK, these are the figures from 1920, 2021, and it says that there are these things that are killing people. And you can see here, look, you see the mouse here. Cattle was the biggest killer, killing 11 people during that period. And as we move around, one person killed by electricity, a few people killed falling from height. Now think back to your own workplace. If you're in a farm or a landed estate environment, think of your work activities, think of your work environments, and these will start to resonate with you because these are probably the things that you do and your workers do on a day in and a day out basis. The common occurrences around the world in this particular sector. So we've got cattle, electrics, falling from things, people being struck by moving objects, and people being struck by vehicles account for quite a large proportion of people being killed. Contact with machinery, and very commonly this involves rotating and moving machinery, and a classic example in our sector is the power takeoff device on agricultural machinery. A high power, high torque, fast moving item, and all it takes is a 1 second contact and very quickly you're dragged in and there's kind of no way out. People get killed by being trapped by things collapsing, and occasionally, not that common, people killed by fire. So remember those points then. So that's within the UK. Let's jump across the globe. Let's snip down to Australia. The slide in the UK showed that during that reporting period there were 41 deaths actually in England, Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. Across in Australia the death toll is a bit higher. It's on a bigger scale obviously. And the 2020 figures on the right hand side here, are you seeing the pattern? It's the same kind of thing, isn't it? We've got tractors, we've got animals, We've got quad bikes. They're used to a greater extent over in Australia, where you've got big, massive expanse of land, very easy to get around by a quad bike. But sadly, as a result of that, more people are being killed. And in this reporting period, that accounted for 22% of the national fatalities in this particular sector. Few people getting killed, 3% by water dams, people on motorbikes, and people on side-by-side mutes. And there's a load of other causes that are within these figures, but I'm not going to go into the minutiae of all of those. I want us to concentrate on these on the right-hand side, because they mirror almost identically what's going on in the United Kingdom. And if we nip across to New Zealand, in the August 20 to July 21 period, 10 deaths. It's on a smaller scale, less people in the country, but look, it's a similar kind of thing over here in New Zealand. It's vehicles, it's chemicals, and it's being hit by falling objects. No, in that particular period, very interesting to see no animal fatalities, which are actually normally quite common, but in that particular reporting period, there weren't any. So that brings us nicely to the end of chapter 1, where we've just had a brief introduction into health and safety, and the key learning points I'd like us to take away from this are that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's literally irrelevant. The international health and safety laws are all very similar in scope, and they're slightly worded different, and they're put across in a different way, but at the end of the day, they all say the same thing: don't kill people and don't injure people and don't make people sick through your working activities. We talked about the 3 main reasons or rationale for good safety management practices in our farms and our estates and our agri-businesses, and that's to ensure that we've got the moral, the financial and the legal implications all boxed off and well covered, so that our people and our businesses don't suffer as a result. And then finally, the deaths caused around the world. We picked on a few common places like Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom, but I can assure you it's the same in America, it's the same in Africa, it's the same in India, it's the same wherever you go in the modern world, where farming and agriculture is a key activity, a key industry in that particular part of the world. The same things are killing people. It's vehicles, it's animals, it's getting trapped by things, it's getting struck by objects. They're all common. And the good news from a health and safety perspective is that armed with that information, we can certainly do something about it, because we know that it doesn't matter where we are, we know the things, the dangers to look out for. So that brings us nicely to the end of chapter 1. I hope you found that interesting, and what you can do now is, if you want, you can go back over it in your own time. As you progress now down to the next, before you go to the next chapter rather, if you click underneath this chapter, you'll see there'll be some downloads. There's various downloads relating to accidents and incidents, and of course you can download the presentation as well. Keep that for yourself and use it as you see fit later on. So thank you very much for listening to chapter 1, and in your own time move along to chapter 2. Thank you for listening.